Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. Um, I hope that you can hear me better this time. I'm still in the process of resolving all this computer stuff, and thank you to you guys that are being so supportive about that. Um, Hopefully, it will be back to normal very soon. But in this video, I really didn't want to talk to you guys about this Comet Ison at all. But I I have to tell you these patterns that I've noticed that are connected to the visions that have come true in 2011 and 2012, and also um, these scriptures in the Bible having to do with the flood, Noah's flood, and the Jewish calendar and the stock market and this gas cloud that's supposedly passing a black hole this year, and it just all of it is tying in, and I don't know why, and I'm honestly really sick of this, but I feel like I need to tell you guys anyway what I see as far as patterns, and I guess you could just call it coincidences if you want. But before I start, I just want you guys to know that there are a few things that I don't pay attention to anymore, and that's because I think that they're not reliable sources of information, and that is, you know, movie release dates, content of movies in relation to comets, things like that. The other thing I don't pay attention to anymore is synchronicities having to do with like the clock. Like, oh, that remember that string of synchronicities that happened with 311 and 322 and all that stuff. I don't pay attention to that stuff anymore. I don't know what it means. I know a lot of you guys are having the same thing with 1111 and all this other stuff. I just don't have time for it anymore, and it doesn't have any kind of, it just doesn't, um it's not, it's just not solid enough for me. I mean, other people can look into it and try to figure out what it's all about. I just don't have time for it. The things that I do pay attention to, though, over time I've learned, over the past several years, I've learned to pay attention to those dreams and visions because they're coming true, and they're very reliable. Even though I never know when these things are going to happen, the fact that they do happen after I upload these videos of these dreams and visions, the fact that they do happen and sometimes in precise detail is solid enough for me to pay attention to it. So I take my dreams and visions very seriously. And the other thing I take very seriously is biblical patterns. So that's what I'm going to talk about here. And unfortunately, it ties in with Comet Ison and some of this other stuff that's going on. And I hate that because I hate comets basically. I'm sick of it. But like I said, because it ties in with my visions in the Bible, I have to share it with you guys. So the first thing that I want to show you is I uploaded this video back in July of last year. It's this video that was on MSNBC, and it has to do with this gas cloud that is supposedly moving toward the center of our galaxy, where supposedly there's a black hole. And they're saying that it will fall into the black hole, which makes sense. I mean, if it's moving toward the center of, if it's moving toward a black hole, it's going to be pulled inside. That's what happens. But here's the thing with the animation that they created of this gas cloud. They showed it passing they showed it passing by the black hole, which I just For some reason, it struck me as odd, and maybe it's nothing, but you can go watch this video if you want. I'll link it below. The object comes in and it passes, this supposed black hole right here, and it passes right in 2013. And you see it go all the way out here and kind of dissipate. I'll just show you real quick. So, um, I looked at that and I thought that really doesn't seem to me like what a gas cloud would do if it was moving toward a black hole. It seems to me more like it would disappear because it's pulled inside of the black hole and there's no light or anything visible out of a black hole. I mean, that's why they call it a black hole, because light cannot escape the gravity of the black hole. So I just thought, okay, who made this animation? It just doesn't go along with what they're saying about this gas cloud. So I thought it was kind of weird. And but that's pretty much all there was to it. I mean, I don't know what to say. It just doesn't make sense to me. But then somebody, is talking about Comet Ison and talking about how it's going to become visible at the end of October, and how it's coming from, Gemini. It's coming from out here, and then it's going to pass, it's going to kind of move around the sun. It's out here in Gemini, and then it's going to move around the sun in this direction through Cancer, and then through Leo, and then over here. So it's going to kind of circle around like this. So the Earth right there, here's Earth, and here's Orion down here, Orion and Gemini. So it's going to circle around in this direction, in the same direction that, that Earth is orbiting around the sun. And then it'll become visible when it's in Leo. So, this is where it was in 1947, and you can see that as I move through the years, this is the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it's staying pretty much in the same place. It's out there in Gemini. And then you'll notice that it starts moving in 2000, it starts moving a little bit. But then in 2009, you'll notice that it really starts moving. Okay. So you can see, I'll go by month now. You can see it travels through Gemini and then Cancer and then Leo. And then it's supposed to become visible at the end of October, when it appears to be in the constellation Leo. That's when it's supposed to be visible. And you know, somebody had, I guess they discovered it last year, and people have been telling me about it for a long time, and I've just ignored it and ignored it because I'm sick of that. I'm just tired of the comet crap. So I just didn't pay any attention to it. But then I was looking at this pattern having to do with Lamech in the story of Noah, in the story of Noah's flood. So if you go to Genesis 5, you'll see that Noah's father Lamech died when he was 777 years old. So right here, I made this little table. He lived 777 years. But he was 595 years old when Noah was born. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood came. Okay. So Lamech lived after he begot Noah 595 years. So he lived 595 years after he had Noah. So right here. And that was when he was 777 years old. So in Genesis 7 we know that Noah was 600 years old when the flood came. So that means that there was a 4 to 5 year period from the time Lamech died at 777 until the flood. The reason I say 4 to 5 is because we don't know whether Noah was at the beginning of his 600th year or the end of his 600th year. If he was at the beginning of his 600th year, then the flood happened after 4 years. But if he was at the end of his 600th year, then the flood happened 5 years after Lamech was 777. Why does it matter? It matters because the Dow dropped 777 points on the Feast of Trumpets 2008. So here's the Jewish calendar. The Feast of Trumpets, which is Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, started on September 29th, 2008, and the Dow dropped on that very day 777 points. That was 7 years after the stock market crash of 2001, right after September 11th. So there was a 7-year period from this September 11th thing, and we know from the other studies how that ties into all of these other scriptural fulfillments. So 7 years from there to this 777 point drop. Does that mean that this is a clue that there is some type of event, flood event coming in 2013? Because 2013 is 5 years after this 777 point drop. Here's the other thing that I have to tell you guys about. And I've told you this before. But I had these visions in the fall of 2011 that were all fulfilled. And you can go to my playlist, Proof the Visions Come True. It's right on my homepage. I had this vision in October of 2011. And I uploaded it to YouTube on like the 13th. And in the vision, I saw a power outage, a hurricane, a volcano, and a circle with a line through it that I thought was the Earth's axis. The first thing I saw was the power outage. And all these people were outside chopping wood. Well, 2 weeks later, Connecticut had a major power outage. They were out of power for like a week, longer than a week. And that's exactly what you saw in the news. It was people outside chopping wood during this week-long power outage. That happened 2 weeks after I had this vision, and it happened on October 29th, 2011. Okay, so it happened right here, October 29th, 2011. Major power outage, but not too bad, only lasted a little over a week. I can't remember how many people. But then, exactly a year later, Hurricane Sandy happened in New York City, and that was a power outage as well, but it lasted like, I don't know how many months, several months. People were out of power. They were living in I think, FEMA camps, some of them, and it was a really major event for them. Exactly a year later. And in the vision that I saw in 2011, I was shown a hurricane next. So first I was shown a power outage, people chopping wood. Then I was shown a hurricane. And then after that, I was shown a volcano. And I think it was at the very beginning of the vision, I saw the circle with the line through it, meaning Earth's axis. Maybe because all of this stuff has something to do with Earth's axis. We know there were axis shifts in 2004, in 2010, and 2011. And these were the locations of Earth This was December. This one was in February. This one was in March. And then we had an event with three 8-point quakes in April of 2012. This is just a theory. I don't know if these axis shifts are being caused by some type of celestial body. I don't know that, but this is just, I just graphed it to try to figure out if maybe that's what was causing it, but I don't know. But the point is, we have had axis shifts, and we never had them before this, as far as I know. And there is a kind of pattern to it. So he's showing me this circle with a line through it that to me looks like an Earth on its axis. Then he shows me a power outage, a hurricane, and a volcano. So here's my question, and I don't know the answer to this. But are we talking about a volcano event right here in 2013, 5 years after the 7.777 drop, and a year after Hurricane Sandy, and which is also a year after the Connecticut power outage? Is this a pattern? Did Jesus show me this event in 2011 because there was a pattern to it? Okay, now remember the pattern that I noticed in these visions having to do with the Christmas fire. There are events, three fall events that happened in 2011 that were visions that were fulfilled. The first one happened in September. It was September 17th. It was the Occupy Wall Street movement started September 17th, 2011. And exactly a year later, it was the Feast of Trumpets, the 1335th day. The next, and that was a first fulfillment of a vision that he showed me prior to that. The second fulfillment was this right here, the Connecticut power outage on October 29th, 2011, and then exactly a year later, Hurricane Sandy on October 29th. The third fulfillment was Christmas Eve, 2011, the Connecticut house fire. And then exactly a year later, the New York house fire that happened on Christmas Eve. And that, some of you guys will remember me talking about that last year and saying, is there going to be another Christmas fire? Is there going to be a New York Christmas fire on Christmas Eve? Because it seems like he's showing me a pattern here with these vision fulfillments. So what I'm saying now, asking now, because I don't have the answers, I don't know, but what I'm asking is, are we looking at a volcano event in around October 29th, 2013? I'm just asking, I don't know. And if we're talking about New York, then are we talking about the volcano on Canary Islands? Because I don't know if you guys are aware, but the Canary Island volcano, they say that if it ever blew, it would cause a giant tsunami that would hit New York. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking the questions, and all I'm really doing is putting the puzzle pieces together and trying to see where they fit and just trying to understand what's going on. Obviously, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Sometimes, the puzzle pieces fit together perfectly and they are right. And other times the puzzle pieces are slightly off. Just trying to put it together here. I don't know. But it does seem like, and I've heard many other people say this, it does seem like there are warnings going on having to do with New York. And maybe it's much bigger than New York, I don't know. But here's the other thing. Comet Ison is supposed to become visible at that same time, around the end of October, and I don't know if it says it in here, but it's supposed to become visible at the end of October 2013 when it's in Leo, around this area right here. So, I mean, it's just a strange coincidence that it's coming visible around the same time that these vision fulfillments have been happening. And then maybe it's also just another strange coincidence that the Mayan Monument 6 had been translated by three different archaeological teams saying that an object would become visible in the sky in 2013. So December, the winter solstice 2012 was the first day of the year, and they're saying, in that year, starting on the winter solstice 2012 until the winter solstice 2013, in that year, this object will become visible or descend, depending on which translation you look at. I have a video on that. It's linked below. You can watch if you haven't seen it already. But is that just another coincidence? And this whole thing having to do with the gas cloud supposedly passing in 2013. You know, is this all just a coincidence too? And then here's the other thing, and I hate to go back to this Comet Elenin BS, but you remember that it perfectly aligned with Earth and the Sun on those two axis shifts. So February 27th, right here, here's Elenin, here's the Earth right here, was lined up. We had that 3-inch axis shift, the big giant chili quake, and you can see that Earth and Elenin are aligned. And then exactly 1 year later, well, not exactly 1 year later, but 1 year later, again, we had an axis shift of 4 to 6 inches this time, by some estimates 10, and Elenin was aligned with Earth and the Sun again, exactly on this date right here. We all remember that. We all know it was weird. It turned out Elenin probably didn't even exist. But the other thing about Elenin was that it was in, where was it? It was in Leo. And the other thing that really irritated me about Elenin was the fact that its lovely little perihelion occurred on September 11th. Remember that? So here it is right here at its closest point to the sun. You can see right here sun distance 0.482. If you look at the 12th, oops, I need to switch this to 1 day. If you look at the 12th, it's 0.484, so it's further away from the sun. And if you look at the 10th, it's 0.483, further away from the sun. So on the 11th, September 11th, the anniversary of 9/11, the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, Comet Elenin miraculously reaches perihelion, its closest point to the sun. And oh, by the way, YU-55, that reached its perihelion on September 11th too. Remember that asteroid that passed close by? Right. So you have all these other people saying, hey, you know what? There's a brown dwarf out in the area of Leo, and that's what's been causing all these axis shifts. And I kind of thought that too in 2011. I mean, that was why I created this diagram. I mean, I uploaded a diagram like this, like over a year ago, trying to figure out when the next axis shift was going to happen. And, I thought that it would probably happen after March 22nd. I uploaded a video in February of last year saying, there's probably going to be another axis shift sometime after March 22nd, 2012. And there was this event on April 11th with three 8.0 quakes, or 8.6, 8.2, and there was another one. But if you go looking for it, it'll only tell you there was two. But I remember there was actually three. But as far as an axis shift, well, they're not saying anything about an axis shift. Maybe they just don't want us to know. But is it caused by an electromagnetic interference of some kind between an object way out here in the Kuiper Belt? You know, every planet has an electromagnetic connection to the sun. But if it's a large enough object, a gas giant, or maybe even a brown dwarf, then little Earth, when it passes through that interference, might be experiencing a little jolt of some kind. Why there was nothing in here, I really don't know. Maybe this isn't even accurate. Maybe it's just some magical coincidence and it means nothing. But what I was talking about was, could this object be a circumbinary planet that orbits around Sirius and then crosses over right in here and spends most of its time in the crossover section since it's a weak gravity area? And then at some point it breaks free from this area and then circles around our sun and then goes back. And I was just kind of postulating that. I don't really know. I'm not a scientist. But we know that the Binary Research Institute is studying the star Sirius as a possible candidate for the second sun in our solar system, thinking maybe we live in a binary solar system. And there are such things as circumbinary planets, planets that orbit two suns. So, is that what this object is? Is that Planet X? Is that what the astronomers have been searching for the last couple of hundred years? And then suddenly they just stop looking for it, and supposedly it doesn't exist anymore. Even though there's this planet that they've named Tyche, or they, I mean, I don't know who they is, the media, I guess, because I've seen several media news broadcast saying, oh, there's this gas giant that they've discovered called Tyche, Tyche. But then NASA says, no, that doesn't really exist. So, what's going on? I mean, does this thing exist or not? And is it the thing that's causing, you know, the global warming, all the earth changes, the axis shifts, and everything? I mean, is that what's causing it? I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But it's just interesting that this comet thing is coming from that same exact area. It's coming from Gemini, which is right here. Gemini is here. Orion is here. Taurus is here. Gemini's here. And Leo is right here. And Virgo is right out here. So if you look at solar system scope, you can see that. So it's coming from out here, supposedly. It's coming from here. Here's Sirius right down here. So it's coming from this area. Did it move up from this area and it was in the crossing area? You know what I mean? Like it's coming from Sirius. It's just a question. I don't know. It's coming from Sirius, but it goes around Sirius way down low. Then it starts coming up, 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 up. And then it sits in the crossing area right here, right around here's Gemini. It sits in this area for a long, long, long time. I'm just asking, I don't know. But that's what the word Nibiru meant. Remember Zacharias Sitchin's Nibiru, the Sumerian text? The planet of the crossing is what that meant. And so I'm just asking the question. I just think it's interesting that Comet Ison is coming from that same area. It just kind of sits out there in Gemini for a long time. And maybe it's just nothing. Maybe it just means nothing. Maybe it's just a coincidence. And, it's just another distraction. Maybe that's all it is. But the fact that we're having all of these other coincidences that are lining up with that same time frame. So Ison is supposed to be visible right here on October 29th. And, in the other videos that I've made, you'll see that the scriptures are pointing to 2013 as being the start of the Great Tribulation. So, is it possible that, something becoming visible in the sky could cause a world war when they realize it's not a comet? I don't know, just an idea. I don't know. I don't know. But with everything that's been going on, with all the fulfillments of the dreams and the visions, with all the weird coincidences with what these comets that are supposedly, oh, it's just a coincidence that it has a perihelion exactly on September 11th. Two different objects, both Elenin and YU-55, and a couple weeks apart or a couple months apart, both having a perihelion September 11th, and all these scriptural fulfillments that are connected with September 11th, and all of this stuff. I mean, what's going on here? I don't know. The only thing I really trust is my visions and the Bible. And my visions, Jesus showed me a volcano. He showed me a power outage, people chopping wood, which is exactly what happened here with Connecticut power outage. Then he showed me a hurricane, which is exactly what happened here a year later. And then he showed me a volcano. So I don't know. I don't know. But I just felt like I needed to tell you guys because I think that it's a significant coincidence. That's all. So I hope you guys are doing well, and and I will talk to you later. I'll leave a link to this video as well in the description box and everything else in case you want to check that out. Okay, bye bye.